Sunday.
It's Sunday morning.
I love mornings.
The games are over, and we're breaking it all down. This is your Morning After podcast, with all the insight and analysis on the Utes, Cougars, and Aggies. The Morning After podcast with Hans, Scotty, and Lloyd Cole begins right now.
And he gave us an opportunity to come in here and show what we're made of.
On 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
All right, welcome in. It's another edition of the Morning After podcast. Scott Gerard, Hans Olsen, Lloyd Cole. We do it every Sunday morning during the college football season to break down what we saw and what we're looking forward to and look ahead to next week as well. But, gentlemen, this was a really, really cool week. When you look back, and we're going to look at these individual games, but you got Utah getting a win against a top 15 team. You got BYU getting a win against a top 15 team in the same conference. The Holy War can't get here soon enough, but man, this was a banner day for the state of Utah, for Utah and BYU.
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, starting off with essentially with Utah at Stillwater, going on the road for their first Big 12 matchup and into an environment like that, and then you have BYU taking on Kansas State, a 13th ranked Kansas State team. I think we talked about it during the week about how big of a weekend this was, and to have with both teams in the Big 12, to have both these big time matchups in the Big 12, I think this is only the beginning of something that's going to be pretty special in this conference.
Hans, when you look at overall how BYU performed yesterday, I was on a plane coming home, so I'm going to go back and revisit the film. I've seen a good chunk of the highlights, but that place is always rocking down there, but it seemed like it was a different level yesterday.
Oh, it was a fun environment, man. It was as wild as I've seen that stadium ever, and they've put in some crazy new things in that stadium with the lighting and some of the different shows that they're putting on, and it was cranked up. And it's late, and people are still acting like it's 1 o'clock in the midday, and I was shocked, man. The environment was incredible, but this BYU team, guys, I guess we have to start to really reevaluate who this team is, because that win kind of shakes you and makes you think, wait a second, did we just completely whiff? I mean, completely freaking whiff on expectations and ideas of what this team is, because Kansas State's the real deal. And BYU mopped the floor with them. And then they did it in the comfort of that amazing atmosphere. And that atmosphere would have been really tough for anybody to play in. And Kansas State, who, boys, they're typically a really disciplined team. And they had 8 or 9 critical penalties in big moments and big drives where they're jumping off sides or not getting aligned properly or holding, and they're negating big yardage, and they're losing it on 3rd or 4th down. And I just am now curious as to who BYU is. I think we missed.
I 100% think that.
We need to talk about that sequence that happened of events that happened before the half, because that's what. And by the way, it all started with the defense. I mean, nothing was really going, and Kansas State was up. Yeah. What was it, 6-0, and all of a sudden you get a couple turnovers, and BYU never looked back after that before the half.
It was wild, and huge props to Jay Hill. And huge props to this entire defensive staff. I was giving a lot of shout-outs to Justin Enna with his linebackers, because I think, Lloyd, that it started with the linebackers. Jack Kelly, I know that we had him on the 60 and 60. I know that we were excited about him because he had, whatever it was, 11 or 12, 13 sacks at Weber State, and we were excited. I remember talking about, we sat in Lloyd's office and we're like, okay, we got Jack Kelly on the list, and excited. Well, can he be another Eddie Heckard, a guy that is able to make that transition and really blows things up? And we all felt really good about him. But Jack Kelly might be in a conversation right now for an all Big 12 first team nod with how good he's playing. He started the thing off, Lloyd, with pressures and with big hits. He came across, got his hand on a ball, popped it loose, and a freshman, Tommy Parasis, who plays in the defensive backfield, it just kind of popped up right into his hands, and Parasis runs it down the sideline for 6 points. And it was like, oh, okay, well, that was big. And there was about a minute – well, there was 2 minutes left when he hit him. And about a minute 30 left by the time all was said and done there. They come back out, and you could see that Kansas State wanted to try to reclaim the momentum. So Matt Wells and this offensive staff, they start getting after it again. And they call a couple pockets, and Avery Johnson drops back to throw it. And we actually went through the events with Tyler Batty last night in the post game. So he drops back and he sits in the pocket, and it's one of those defensive switches where you drop your defensive end into a running back spy, but more of a third zone. And so Batty drops off the line, which then switches Jack Kelly off the into the rush. Jack comes flying through, and he hits Avery, and Avery's just trying to release the ball, and Tyler Batty is right there to get underneath it and comes up with this great interception. And then the bonkers thing is, guys, all of a sudden the BYU offense is sparked, and they come out, and in a couple plays they find the end zone. And it was 14 points in, I don't know, a minute and a half right before the half. And there was no way that Kansas State could reclaim any energy after that. It was smashed. And then, you throw on a special teams touchdown with a punt return by Parker Kingston. It's one of the craziest punt returns I've ever seen.
Oh, and you talk about discipline, hands. You talk about the lack thereof. And I'm not taking anything away from Parker Kingston, because that was a remarkable return. But that special teams unit for Kansas State looked flat-footed, out of position, all over the place, no discipline whatsoever, and BYU just took advantage. And, when you get in a game like that and you have that 2-touchdown swing like BYU had, and you get in front of that crowd and you get in that home environment, and you can't get that momentum back if you're Kansas State. You're done. And it was just like
they were crushed.
And they were just, BYU was just a bunch of hungry piranhas. Those fans were just having a feeding frenzy out there. And once
was wild.
Once you tilt that field and you're done, like Kansas State could have just walked off at halftime down 14-6 and realized there ain't no way we're getting back in this game because of just the overall momentum, tidal wave of energy that was coming at them from the fans and the players. And it's like, you're done. You are absolutely toast.
And it felt like it really started right around that, that Batty interception. One might say the crowd was going Batty for Tyler Batty.
Oh, okay. Not
it's so early.
No.
Oh, so early. No.
Okay, but can we talk about? Okay, so you talk about that special teams with with Kingston. Did we hear all week from everybody about, and I even heard it on game day, about how good this Kansas State special teams unit was or whatever? And they were flat-footed. Yeah. Everybody talked about how good Kansas State's special teams is. They had a certain amount
defense,
of and defense. And guess what? They just punched them in the mouth and just smoked that team.
I've got to give it to the fans. Honestly, the defense was incredible, but guys, I don't know what it was. I don't know. It's like that 8:30 kick, and it kind of slid, and it got late, and the place was just pure madness. And Scotty, I think you said it really well. It was like you had a bunch of piranhas that saw meat, and they're just all hit when they got that first big moment And that goes to Jack Kelly. Jack was just on target all night. And we all three of us know Avery Johnson is a very capable quarterback, and he couldn't get some breathing room. It was, and he still went and got some yards. I mean, he had 74 yards rushing, but he had one long of 30, and then collected the other 40 kind of in bits and pieces. But yeah, that place. I wish I could have been a player on the field.
Oh boy, yeah. I can't imagine. I mean, you had some crazy atmospheres down there, but I don't know if outside of maybe 96, maybe that Texas A&M game in 96 was maybe the only thing that came relatively close to what you saw last night. But
that's a good one. That's a good pull there, Scotty. That was incredible. That opener in that 96 season was incredible. But you don't have the LED lights, and you don't have the knife, the fire knife throwers, and you don't have the whole production that just engages people. The BYU ops team and their full display team, they deserve a lot of credit.
Well, they as soon as Sione Moa went in for that last touchdown, and by the way, that was a man's run for that 21-yarder. I'm telling you, Kansas State, they waved the flag and they said, "No Moa."
Yeah,
Lloyd, what has gotten into you this morning?
Okay, let's not have fun today. Fine.
Do something with your guy, man. What's going on here?
You don't want to have no fun?
I'm not claiming any ownership of him today.
He waved the flag and said no more.
Lloyd, have you had your coffee?
I have. That's why I'm on fire right now. I've been up since
you're the
6.
only one. You're the only one laughing at this, right? Like you're the only one enjoying this.
I promise you. Okay, you know what? When you leave your guys' when you go rate the show and you leave a nice message on the podcast, tell me about how funny I am, because that was funny. I don't care what you said. No Moa.
Nobody's going to rate
Batty
it after
for Tyler Batty.
I think
whatever.
Everybody checked out. Done. Oh boy,
guys. So tell me this: what do we have on our hands here with BYU?
See, that's what I was going to ask you. So here's I think after 4 games, we can talk about what we know. We know that this defense is no joke. This defense is back, and Jay Hill's fixed the defense. Like, they've got a great defense now. We know that Jack Kelly's a superstar. We know that BYU can now manufacture pressure on the quarterback. It's funny, going into this season, the biggest question marks I had are the things that I'm sure about the most right now, and that's defense. And so I feel really comfortable. And to your credit, Hans, you were the one saying all along, even going into the season, that the defensive tackles were better than what we were given credit for. And so, and so that D line has done everything that's been asked of them. And so, what we know is that BYU and Jay Hill are square defensively. Offensively, as Lloyd mentioned, I think there was some stretches early where they struggled, and then once they got into a groove and the momentum shifted, then it was off to the races for them. We've seen it already. The defense will travel for BYU. Will the offense travel on the road for BYU? And that's that to me is about the only question I have left with them.
What were your thoughts on Jake Retzlaff, Hans? It felt like he didn't make any mistakes, because BYU in general, they had no turnovers. It felt like he managed the game.
Yeah. I had a guy. I sent out a tweet after the game that said it's the most complete game I've seen in the Kalani Sitake era, from every aspect. Guys, they did not have a single costly penalty. They had 2 flags on the night. One was they drew the flag because they wanted better field position to kick a punt to try to pin him. And then the other one was a roughing the quarterback in like one of the final drives. It was a young kid. It was Puaha's kid that just hit the quarterback late, and that was even questionable. That was it. Other than that, it was clean. And somebody said to me, well, how can you call it a good night when it was only 92 rushing and 149 passing and this offense? Their average starting field position, and Scotty, I'm sure you've seen some good ones in your time, but their average starting field position was the 44-yard line.
Ooh.
And so it's like you don't have a lot of field that you've got to go. They started at the 44 more often than not. It is just crazy to me. Now you throw in the turnovers and you throw in the forced downs and you throw in a lot of the things that the defense did, and you just had short fields. So people are going to look at Jake Retzlaff's numbers and probably think they're pretty pedestrian. But in my opinion, they're far from pedestrian. He was at 72% in completion. He found multiple drags. He threw well on the run. He hit the target, as Lloyd just mentioned. He was not erratic. He did not risk the ball there. So I'll go back a week ago. I think he put the ball in jeopardy 5 times. He put the ball in jeopardy. That they could have been picked, or somebody could have got their hands on it, or he didn't put the ball in jeopardy. And I never saw it like, oh, that was a risky throw, or, oh, man, there's no way he should have released on that one. It was all very calculated, finding his open guy and making a good throw. And so I give Jake Retzlaff a really high grade. And I think Scotty hit it on the head. Can they travel? Because we know that we watched SMU yesterday put 66 points on TCU. And
that
they did not score a
better.
touchdown. They did not score a touchdown against BYU, which is crazy. So Scotty's dead on. That defense can travel. Well, let's see, because if this offense can travel, well, then you may have something kind of special on your hands. But the good news is every one of your tough opponents that you got left, Arizona, Oklahoma State, I guess Central Florida is starting to come back around. But, and then Rice Eccles is going to be crazy. But you've got that comfort of that home for most of your big games. I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out because I'm just so in shock by the complete performance.
I'll tell you what I want
to go back.
Go ahead, Han. Sorry.
Go ahead, Lloyd. I was just going to say you got to go back to 1996 to find the last time you had a defensive and special teams score in the same game.
Coincidence?
1996.
I think not.
No, that is a wacky one. Yeah.
You know what I want to see? You talked about this being Kalani's, best win as a coach. You know what I want to see on Monday? In the whole week, I want to see Kalani, because there's no doubt Kalani and this staff have had an edge, to them. There's a fire that is with these coaches right now, and I want to see that edge continue. Don't get happy with this. It's a great win, but that edge, when you hear them answering questions, and they're kind of firing back at the end, they're a little bit grumpy. Keep that edge, because I think this team is feeding off that coaching staff.
Well, this definitely is a team that was not thrilled about conversations of their demise in the offseason, and they have responded in a big way. Let's talk Utah, Lloyd. You had the pre and post on this one as the Utes get a little bit of a scare down the stretch, but for the most part, that defense, talk about defense traveling, that defense flat out dominated. Ollie Gordon was a non-factor in this game. Oklahoma State scores 2 late touchdowns, but other than that, that's about as dominating of a performance as we've seen. But in your conversations with Steve Bartle and the crew there at Oklahoma State, give us the latest on Cam Rising, because sure felt like he was going to go all week, and then all of a sudden, much like a couple times last year, pre-game decides, nope, we're not doing it.
Yeah, as Kyle Whittingham said in the post game, he said he was always a game time decision. It wasn't game. It was game time, and they when they got together, they said essentially Whit said that Isaac Wilson gave them the best chance. And Cam Rising also agreed on that, and that's when the decision was made. I get the feel, in talking to Bartle, in the pregame thought he was going to go. But then when I went back and listened to, because I didn't get a chance to hear, the opening comments on the broadcast with like Brock Heward, and it didn't seem like Brock Heward was necessarily surprised that he didn't go, judging by how he was throwing the ball. It sounded like he had no zip on the ball when he was throwing pregame, and so when Isaac Wilson went out there, I don't think he was surprised that Isaac Wilson was. I didn't get the feeling that he was surprised that he was the starter, judging by what Brock Heward knows quarterbacks, but by what he saw, with Cam Rising in that pregame. So it's game time decision, and I think, this is going to be a discussion that we're going to have all week. Is what reps are going to go to Wilson, and how's that hand coming along for? Because to me, it sounds like maybe there's a grip issue. Which, Hands, you tell me what that means. I talked a little bit with. I don't try to play a doctor, but talking with Christian Cox, there's a grip issue, maybe that could be a tendon issue. You don't know, which might be a bigger problem than just some stitches.
If it's a grip issue, then there is something structural that's going to be problematic. If that's the if we're talking about a grip, I'm curious on the Brock Heward thing. I was trying to pack up and get ready to leave, and I called Lloyd and I said, "Hey, Lloyd, did you get to hear the open with Brock? Because I was curious if they did pull the quick one on the Fox team again." And I think that when you're the TV, when you're the broadcast partner of the Big 12, and you're going into a broadcast, most of the time, the broadcast is big news for the game tonight. Utah will be going with freshman Isaac Wilson. Cam Rising is out, and then you go into the broadcast. Scotty, you know better than me, but
100%.
Is that not?
Yeah.
That's typically how TV partners roll. It's not like, well, I'm going to hint towards this. And so I think maybe they did feel Cam was going to go, and it was a late second scratch. But, guys, then there's a part of me that's like, when Vegas moved that line and I saw Isaac take that field, there was part of me that was like, this was planned, and they knew it the whole time.
That's kind of the vibe I got. And you're right, though. When you're getting big money from conferences or your conferences are getting big money from those TV networks, there are a lot of conversations where and these coaches will sit down with these broadcast crews and really spill their guts. Now, I didn't mind it last year when that crew wasn't there and they were broadcasting remotely, but Brock Heward was there in Salt Lake, wasn't he? That wasn't a remote broadcast.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, right.
And so, part of me was like, hey, look, if you're not going to put in the effort to be here, then I'm not going to put in the effort to give you the latest information on what's going on with the quarterbacks.
With that.
1,000%, yes. Because I think TV networks need to be slapped around for being lazy like that. But
I agree.
If you've got a crew there that you respect, that has done the work, and we know Brock Heward does the work, and that entire staff does the work, and you leave them out to dry like that, that's not okay. These are professionals. They'll keep your secret. They're not to disclose anything to the other team. And I don't have a problem with that. I really feel like it was a game time decision. But then again, you got the Vegas thing too, Hans. I mean, we can't look past that Vegas thing. We really can't.
Yeah, it was moving all over the place.
I got to throw this in too. There's a layer of inside info that Brock Heward is privy to with his nephew being on that team. So and a quarterback nonetheless.
Right.
So I can't imagine that Brock didn't call up Sam and say, Sam, where are we at this thing? And Sam would be 1,000% privy to any calculated move that was potentially going to happen. So This all boils down to it being a last-second decision to me.
Yeah.
That
And that's the feel that I got from that.
Yeah.
So, but the
which is
game
crazy.
overall,
That's nuts.
Yeah, but the game overall, I mean, let's be honest. This Utah absolutely they dominated Oklahoma State from the jump. Really, I mean, they were up 22-3, and if you go and look at the time of possession, 42 minutes, 42-26 for Utah to 17-34 for Oklahoma State. It was domination. 285 total yards for Oklahoma State versus 456 for Utah. They really did come out and make a statement. They punched them in the mouth. And I get people are going to look at it and be like, wow, that's 22-19. That's quite a ball game. But it really wasn't that close in that game. And Isaac Wilson, you know what? Dude is just taking steps each game. Getting a half in mop up time, getting about 3/4 after Cam goes down, getting a full game action going into against Utah State, getting all those reps, and I don't know how many those starter reps that he got in the week or whatever, but he managed the game. And yes, did he throw some interceptions? Yeah, he had 2 interceptions. But the thing is, he does not look like a quarterback that was fazed by it. Like, he looks very comfortable, very confident, and the thing is, we've seen him just get better each week, and I think we'll continue. If it's Isaac Wilson, obviously Cam Rising gives Utah the best chance to win. But if he's injured and the hand's not right, you're feeling more and more comfortable with Isaac Wilson as your quarterback. And me and Christian gave out some game balls in this game when this one's final. You got to give one to the defense. The defense was phenomenal. You had Smith Snowden had a phenomenal game. He almost had a pick six. He had a couple breakups. Dude is standing out. And you had an interception by Elijah Davis, Scooby Davis as they call him. You had an interception by Gilman. This defense was suffocating, and on the another game ball you're going to give to probably is Mekhi Bernard, who went off for 182 yards. He had another long run, a 62-yard run. I know Kyle said in the post game that he doesn't want him to go be around 25 carries. You're probably wanting him around 20, and at one point he looked a little bit gassed, but he had one hell of a game in this one as well.
Well, he did, and I think that we need to have a conversation. Is Mekhi Bernard actually now that guy? I mean, he's going to have to be that guy because they don't really have anybody else, but on top of that, he seems to be more than capable of being the guy. And $184, is that what you said, Lloyd?
Yep,
rushing?
182.
182. So he has 182 yards. And when I got on the bus coming back from Temple and we were waiting to get on the plane, I was watching a little bit of this game, and you could tell in the second half Kyle Whittingham did what Kyle Whittingham does in some of these games when he knows he's got control and his defense is dominating. He's like, we're not going to make big mistakes, and we're just going to take the air out of the ball. And it was Mekhi Bernard right, Mekhi Bernard left, Mekhi Bernard right. And even though it led to some punts and led to some empty possessions, they never made the big mistake in the second half, at least some of the parts that I saw. And Oklahoma State knew Mekhi was getting the ball. They knew where it was going. And still he was able to churn out some big yards. Still he was able to churn out some big production. And to be able to run out the clock and not allow Oklahoma State to get an opportunity late in that game, down 3, that's exactly what you want out of your running back. When you know it's coming your way and the defense knows it's going your way and you're still able to move the chains, hey, great job by him. Great job by that offensive line.
Yeah, by the way, Kyle Whittingham, this defense, Morgan Scalley, this defense, they made Mike Gundy in Oklahoma State. You could see they were desperate to get something going. They couldn't get anything going with Bowman, And they came out in the second half and they went with Rangel, the redshirt freshman, and he was 3 of 11, 31 yards, did nothing, couldn't get anything going. But they were desperate because he was a little bit more of a mobile quarterback, where Bowman's more in the pocket, and it took them. It was a nice little try, a little experiment, and of course, Mike Gundy has a little explaining to do of why he made that move, because then Bowman comes in and he gets a little bit going, but this defense, it really comes down to this defense.
This is so good. 48 yards rushing as a team for Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
We talked about how Bowman really has carried Oklahoma State to this point because he's throwing in the 330s, and
Gordon's not right. There's something not right with that running. I don't know what's going on with their running game, but Ollie Gordon's not the same. He's not Ollie Gordon.
No, he's not. And you could see it early, but Utah's just so good defensively. I did want to throw a plug out there for the receivers because they had some of the most incredible catches. Keithy and Dorian Singer and Money Parks, they were doing everything they could to keep Isaac Wilson's completion rating pretty high. They were catching balls off the top of their head and comebacks and turnaround type catches, and they did an incredible job catching what Isaac Wilson was putting out there. And I'm not saying Isaac was horrible, but some of them were behind the receiver in the route and they had to come back and turn around. Some of them were high, and he'll dial those in. I have no doubt about that. I mean, he's a Wilson, and those Wilsons are hard workers, and they're film studiers, and they self-scout, and they really work internally. And I know their dad has a big role in that. But these receivers had some incredible catches for this Utah offense too.
Well, and oh yeah, I think you're seeing Dorian Singer really start to come into his own and maybe look a little bit more like the Arizona State Dorian Singer than maybe the USC Dorian Singer. And that's going to be a huge big time threat, whether it's Rising or Zach Wilson. But every game, I think, Lloyd, you hit it on the head. Every game that Zach Wilson gets in there, gets reps, and comes away with a W is just house money at this point. Now, look, if Utah wants to be a college football playoff team and make a run in the college football playoff, they're going to need a healthy Cam Rising. But for the remainder of this year in his development and for years going forward, every moment like this in a nasty road trip that Zach Wilson gets and he walks away with a win is just adding to the resume and adding to the experience, and Utah's going to be better off for it in the long term. And so you get the best of both worlds. You're developing your future superstar quarterback, and you're still picking up W's, even on a day where Connor O'Toole and Karini Reed don't go, and yet you still put up a defensive effort like that.
The thing is, we put Isaac Wilson went in and did this in Stillwater. That fan, if you looked at that crowd, like that place was nuts. And in talking to PK in the post game, I mean, he said that place was crazy. And not only that, it was they had like set records on heat. Like it was like 100 degrees, and that field on that with that turf was like 145, 160, something like that, down on the ground. And Isaac Wilson and you. Me and Christian were talking about it. Christian, I think we give way too much credit to Oklahoma State's offense. Seeing what they did, and they didn't really do it against anybody in their previous games. And I don't think we gave enough credit to the depth of. And I'm talking about when me and Christian were kind of talking in the pregame, and I don't think we give enough credit to how good. This defense would be, because we're thinking, okay, you got no Karini Reed, you got no Connor O'Toole, you're a little banged up. I wasn't even quite sure. We weren't quite sure, if Scooby Davis was going to be out there, because, I know he suffered probably a little bit of a concussion against Utah State. I would imagine he got his bell rung. So I don't think we gave enough credit, and for Isaac Wilson to go in there as a freshman, and then this defense to do what they did. This is such a good win, and I know, I mentioned it earlier. You look at the 22-19. That does not do this. If you go look at the stats, though, that shows you how lopsided this game really was.
So Utah gets the W, BYU gets the W. Both are going to be ranked in the top 25. Good chance both are in the top. I mean, at least BYU may even break the top 20. And so
you might see Utah in the top 10, I would imagine.
Yeah, Hans, I would really love that Holy War to be played this week. Imagine a ranked Utah, ranked BYU going toe-to-toe in Rice-Eccles, both undefeated. Oh, my gosh. God bless America. Well, please let that happen.
I don't see anybody beating Utah right now.
No.
I mean, Arizona would be their stiffest test. TCU got throttled by SMU. Houston's terrible. Arizona State, on the road, it's going to be a bit of a battle. But other than that, that's your 4 games before you get to BYU. Arizona, Arizona State, TCU, and Houston. BYU's got a little bit of a tougher test because they've got to go to Central Florida. And that's going to be a tough game. But let's say they get there with 1 loss. Let's say they find their way out of Baylor. They beat Arizona. And then they've got Oklahoma State at home in that environment. And then at Central Florida. Let's say they get there with 1 loss. You are going to have 2 very highly ranked teams that are going to be playing in that Holy War. And that is when things get serious around here.
And that would be a game day game, honestly. If both of them are top 20 teams in that rivalry, that's a game day game.
And then the Big 12. Oh, yeah.
All right. I don't really want to talk about this one because, Hans, being around you for the last 10 years, working every day and knowing you for 20 years, I always, joke about how angry you get watching bad football. That was not good yesterday for Utah State. Aggies, and you guys watched that Utah game. You know the missed opportunities that Utah State had with empty possessions inside the 35-yard line with missed field goals and interceptions. Well, Utah State, it doesn't matter if you're playing a top 10 team in Utah. It doesn't matter if you're playing a previously winless team in Temple. You leave opportunities like that, and I've heard coaches say this all the time. You piss off the football gods when they give you gifts, and they're going to make you pay. And the football gods were giving Utah State gifts right and left yesterday. Temple's first 4 possessions started at the 1, the 3, and the 6. And they had to punt. And they had to punt on each and every one of them. Utah State had 5 out of their first 6 drives start inside the 50-yard line, and they only had 14 points. And their first 3 drives, they get down inside the 20, and a big holding penalty knocks them back to the point where they have to punt. They get down to the 1-yard line and get stopped on 4th and goal at the 1. And then it's just mistake after mistake after mistake. Finally, they get a couple touchdowns, and they go up 14-0. But then all of a sudden, Temple catches fire offensively, and Utah State defensively cannot get stops. From that point on, Temple scores on 7 out of their next 9 possessions. That 9th possession, by the way, just being one where they run out the clock and end the game. But this was a Temple team that had averaged 11 points a game coming into that game, had only scored 33 points in the first 3 games of the year, and they end up running away from Utah State when the Aggies defensively just can't get off the field. And Utah State loses a game that they had no business losing whatsoever. Utah State, there's certain games you watch and you're like, okay, this team won the game or this team lost the game. I don't think Temple won the game yesterday. I think Utah State lost it. Utah State was the better team. They're more talented, they're bigger, they're stronger, they're faster, and yet, for whatever reason, they didn't take advantage of big opportunities. They had a fake punt perfectly called, would have been a walk-in touchdown, but there was a penalty on Utah State. There was so many critical pre-snap penalties. There were holding penalties. There were just these little things that kept making it, instead of first and goal from the 11 or first and goal from the 8, it was 1st and 20. Rasul Faison played like a man possessed, had over 50 yards rushing wiped away because of penalties. He still ended up with 148 yards rushing in that game. Jalen Royals was a man yesterday, but again, stupid mistakes and a defense that couldn't get off the field. It was that was as rough of a game that I've been around in terms of just taking the AK-47, pointing it at your foot, and just turning it into Swiss cheese. And that is exactly what Utah State did over and over and over again last night. And Nate Dreiling came on the post-game show, and the first words out of his mouth was, I apologize to this Utah State fan base. This one's on me and our coaching staff. We did not have these guys ready. I apologize, because that was the kind of performance that a coach gets on the air and immediately apologizes for, because, again, Utah State had no business losing that game yesterday.
So when and what? Give me the whole decision with Spencer Petras and Bryson Barnes. And was it the right decision, and how did you feel Petras showed when that decision was made?
Well, I think Petras was fine, and that's the thing. When a team loses a game like that, I think you immediately look at the quarterback, and look, we talked to Nate Dreiling on Tuesday, and I asked him point blank if Petras is healthy, is he your guy? He's like, yes, 100% yes. I mean, there was no doubt in his mind whatsoever. And I feel like they knew all along, all week, that Petras was going to be the guy. And I think Petras prepared all week like he was going to be a guy. This wasn't a game-time decision. I think this has certainly been in the works all week long, that they planned on Petras playing. To me, could they have gotten better quarterback play? Sure. Does Bryson Barnes, everything else being equal, the defense performing the way that it played yesterday, if Bryson Barnes is in that game, I still think Utah State loses that game with how the rest of that team performed in other aspects. So I don't put it on Petras. Could he have been better? Absolutely yes. Would Bryson Barnes have been the key to an Aggie victory? I don't think so, just because there were and it's not a knock on Barnes or a knock on Petras. I just think it's that there were so many other aspects in play that allowed Utah State to and I don't know, maybe Barnes finishes some of those drives early in the game. But there were just so many defensive issues, Hans. I just can't point at the quarterback and say that's where things got sideways with Utah State. They ran the ball so well for the most part too, and it just when they started having lapses defensively, it just got away from them, and then they couldn't get stops and couldn't get off the field, which really surprised me after how well they did in long stretches against the University of Utah.
Give me.
They should have. This doesn't feel like in
the fourth quarter.
What was that, Hans?
How did they put the 21 points up in the fourth quarter? What all happened?
Temple.
That it was that big of an explosion there in the fourth.
It just Utah State's defense just couldn't get stops, and your Aggie offense.
So those were all drives.
Oh, they were all drives. Yeah. There were no pick sixes, no fumble returns, no kickoff returns, nothing like that. And you know what's interesting? And you talk about momentum all the time, Hans. I think this was a really interesting moment. I don't look at the fourth quarter. I look at the end of the first half. Utah State's up 14-0. Temple goes on 2 touchdown drives and ties the game up at 14 with about a minute and a half left. And Utah State marches right down the field and puts a touchdown on the board with 17 seconds left. A Rasul Faison 20-yard run, and he scores. And so Utah State's up 21-14, looking like they're going to take a 7-point lead into halftime. And so they've got momentum going into half. But they give up a kick return to about the 35, 40-yard line. And then they throw a quick 10-yard out, and then they bring out the kicker. Now, remember, this is Temple. This is sea level. This kicker comes out and attempts a 64-yard field goal attempt at the end of the first half with 3 seconds left. And he boots the hell out of that ball, but it's still, I'm looking at it, I'm like, this is short. And Jalen Royals is there in the end zone. I'm like, Royals is going to have a chance to return this thing. We might have that kick six like Auburn and Alabama a few years ago. And the ball comes down, it keeps carrying, and it hits the crossbar, bounces up, and rolls in. And
oh my gosh.
And
holy moly.
So the dude connects on the longest field goal in college football since 2009, a 64-yard field goal. and Temple comes to midfield and they celebrate like they just won a national championship. And they get the ball to start the second half. And I look over at Kevin and I'm like, have you ever seen a field goal lead to that kind of momentum? And he's like, it could happen. And sure enough, they carried that momentum from that crazy field goal. And the crazy, to get points on the board was just 17 seconds left. They carried that momentum into halftime, and all of a sudden they look like a much different team in the second half. And it's really funny. We talk about momentum, and with that BYU game, those little plays, like the end of the first half in the BYU game, those little plays that just give you a little spark can turn a game upside down. And I really felt like I did that yesterday.
64. I've never seen a 64.
Yeah.
That is crazy. So the most in college football since 2009?
Yeah, some dude from Tarleton State hit a 64-yarder. And I don't know what the full record – I don't know if that ties the record. All I know, the only stat I got on it was that's the longest field goal in college football since 2009.
That is the second time Tarleton State has been brought up this season.
I know, right? So anyway, Utah State.
Isn't the NFL record 63?
I think it's 66 now.
Oh,
it used to be 63 for a long time.
Isn't that set by a Bronco? Isn't it? It's got to be a Bronco. It's got that. Right?
It was at one point. I don't think it is anymore for some reason. I don't know. Maybe it used to be. Tom Dempsey and his club foot forever, and then Jason
His
Elam.
illegal foot.
Yeah, I know. I agree. And then Jason Elam tied him. And then there's been a few that have exceeded it. Didn't your boy Seabass have the record for a little bit?
He might have. Yeah, Seabass was crazy like that. He might have had it at one point. But one hell of a leg.
Here's the problem with Utah State, though, Hans. You win that game, and Utah State's got a bye week before they play Boise here in 2 weeks. You win that game, which you should have. You're 2-2, and you start conference play. You're like, all right, we lost to USC and you lost to Utah. You can live with that, But you're 2-2, and you're 500 going into conference play. Now you're 1-3, and your next two games at Boise, home against UNLV. I mean, and now you're 1-3, and you're playing catch up, and you've got your two most difficult conference opponents coming up in back-to-back weeks. Utah State very well could be staring 1-5, and at that point, who knows, with what this team's had to deal with and what they've had to go through, you wonder where they're going to be at mentally over these next few weeks for sure.
There was a much different feeling during the week and on Friday. Like even when we talked about it with Mac, about this Utah State team, and he's like, "This is a good Utah State team." And now you get out, you leave, you come home from this lopsided loss to Temple, and it's completely changed the thoughts on this team.
Yeah. All right, gentlemen. That wraps it up for us, unless you guys have anything else you want to work in.
Nope, I got no Moa. Time. Oh, we got story time?
Just really quick story time. Just kind of a cool thing.
All right.
And I'll make it really quick.
No, you're good.
They honored the 1996 team yesterday, so I got to go down and be with my first teammates when I was a freshman at BYU, it was awesome. Ronnie Jenkins and Donnie Atawaya and all this. It's just the best crew. Shea Murbach came back, and I even saw Darren Yancey for the first time in 27 years. Saw guys that I hadn't seen forever. And I'm walking into the stadium and getting ready to jump on the elevator, and Patty Edwards turns the corner. Lavell Edwards' wife, Patty, turns the corner. And it was just awesome because, you got this crazy environment. She's there with her two friends, and they're just having a ladies' night. And I gave her a big hug, and I said, "Oh, my gosh, Patty, you look amazing." And she goes, "Not bad for 92, huh?" And I was like, "Jeez, look amazing for 92.
92, wow.
And I said, "Are you excited?" And she goes, "Oh, yeah, I'm excited. It's fun being here." I go, "Are you nervous?" And she goes, "No, I'm not nervous. BYU has this." And I was like, "Okay, Patty." I'm like thinking, all right, Patty, that's nice. And she was right, man. She nailed it. BYU had it. She didn't have any nerves. She was just confident that Kalani and BYU was going to win it. And she is a stinking warrior. Just how incredible she is, just moving around with her friends, ready to have a party in a box. What I am glad that they take good care of her. I think that they put her in a really nice suite and take care of her. But
they didn't have her sitting in the stands, really?
Oh no, man!
Not with the student section.
I think they better give her own private suite.
Yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
I think so.
But guys, she was from the jump. She was confident, and I just thought it was cute. It was so great to see her, and especially on a night where they're honoring what I think is Lavell's best team. I might be a little bit biased, but
how cool was it to see Sark there?
Couldn't believe he showed up. Honestly, when he turned up at the buffet table and said, "Fight on!" No, he didn't. He wasn't there. He had important business to.
He had the
lack of commitment.
He had the phenom out there playing quarterback, slinging it for him in Arch, who had a big game yesterday.
Yeah, that's a good problem to have.
Yeah, no, he's going to be just fine with that kid. Yeah, I will say Philadelphia, they know how to do it right, man. They had Philly cheesesteaks and soft pretzels in their pregame meal. And, sometimes these meals, in these pregame meals, they try to get a little cute. And they're like, oh, we're going to do this and blah, blah. No. You just lean into what makes you great. And the bun was a little hard and a little stale, but the ribeye cooked perfectly, seasoned perfectly for a medium meal. Outstanding. Pretzels with a little mustard, a little cheese sauce. Hot darn. Can't complain, man. Life was pretty good yesterday.
I saw the picture. Was the bun as dry as it looked?
Yeah, the bun wasn't.
Okay?
The bun wasn't good, and so I tore out. I put it in the bun more for presentation and the Instagram more than anything, and then I ripped the bun away and just ate the meat and cheese. But
I knew it. I got my boy tagged. I knew it. I was like, that doesn't look like Scott. First of all, Scotty's not all into eat the bread right now.
No,
that looks a little bit dry.
And I love a good soft pretzel, and so I had a little bit of the pretzel, but after that, the stomach's like, nope, you're done. So I'm like, oh, yeah. Okay. I talk a big game, but it's all talk. All right. Hans and Scotty, there you go. Your morning after podcast. Thanks for listening. Please rate. Do not hold Lloyd and his stupid puns against us.
Against us.
Against him, maybe, but don't let it.
You
don't
guys
hold
are just
it against
mad you
us,
didn't come
our
up with them on your own. You're just mad.
Yes, that's what's exactly going on here. We are very mad and very jealous.
Jelly.
But please leave us a rating. Please leave us a review. Please make it good because that helps us. And tell your friends, tell everybody at Sacrament and all your other meetings, hey, just listen to this podcast, and it gets them numbers and keeps them employed because we need that. There you go. Morning After Podcast. Back on the air tomorrow at high noon, breaking it all down. You'll hear from Kalani Sitake. You'll hear from Kyle Whittingham. You'll hear from Nate Dreiling. A lot to recap. A busy weekend of college football and a good one for the state right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
This has been your Morning After Podcast with Hans, Scotty, and Lloyd Cole. Catch more of the Hans and Scotty Show weekdays from noon to 3 and in podcast form by searching Hans and Scotty on your podcasting platform of choice. This is 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.